Hey folks, Jeff Little here from Torqeedo, and what we're going to do today is we're going to do an install of a Torqeedo Ultralight 403 on this Bonafide SS127. We'll go ahead and start with what materials you're going to need in terms of the parts that are part of the motor. Here's your motor pylon. This part here is going to be attached to the ball mount. Once we get the ball mount installed, you got a ball mount, you got a gasket, you got your hardware to put that on, and you got this thing here. And what this does is it cradles that that horizontal pipe as it goes back. So you have two real contact points. You have the ball mount, and then you have this. This is also important later on, we'll see, in adjusting our trim with each of these little shims, these little rubber shims. I got a pile of them there. And then we got the steering triangle, and then this piece here just sets how deep the motor will go. And obviously we're going to want some silicone to make sure that we have a good waterproof seal on that. We're going to go ahead and drill the holes, and I'm going to talk about where you want to position the ball mount there. The tools we have obviously are Allen wrenches, a screwdriver, adjustable wrench, a drill, an index, and I like using all these. These are neat little tools that fit into tight little places. So let's go ahead and get started, and we're gonna find a good position for the ball mount and this rubber cradle. So to do a good job finding the right position for the mounting ball and the rubber cradle, you'll need to partially assemble your motor pylon with this pivoting bracket and the horizontal pipe, and at least half of the you're going to take half of the clamp that goes around the mounting ball, and you're going to do this in a way that you want to make sure that this motor, the vertical pipe that leads down to the motor pylon, is centered on the back. I'm going to change the perspective so you can get a top-down view of what I'm looking at here. So in this install, I am trying to preserve the openness of this 4-bolt pattern here that will make installation of this accessory right here, the Power Pole Micro, possible. So I'm leaving this area clean, and I'm going to mount the Torqeedo mounting ball and rubber cradle on this side. The reason for that is if you look at the nature of how the horizontal pipe is sort of offset from where the motor is, and I want the motor to be centered. A really important consideration on where you place this. And initially I started with the mounting ball and the cradle here, and I thought, yep, that's going to get the motor as far back as possible, and that should be a goal, is to get your motor as far back as possible. But upon looking at it, I've already run my lines, and I use the the little divot here that is in the Bonafide boat for running my rudder control steering line. It's in the way of that. So what I'm doing is I'm moving it off to the side, and what that's going to do is it's going to change the angle of this pipe inward a little bit. And you look at it and you say, is it centered? Is this motor centered on the boat, and on the side where the mount is there any interference with this steering? And in this particular position, there is not. So that's going to be my position, and here shortly I'm going to be opening this hatch. It's really nice that Bonafide put this in for easy access to the inside. One quick note about running rudder cable controls. In this particular boat, I used the tubing in there. I'm going to see if I can pull it out to show you what it is. So you have the plastic tubing right there, and I actually have a video on this on the Bonafide owners group on Facebook, how I did this setup. But basically, this stainless steel cable is running up to here, coming out here, and then I control the steering with my feet. And like I said, look on the Bonafide owners group for that install video. Many manufacturers offer a rudder kit, and I've actually been working with Wilderness Systems on offering a motorization kit. They already have a throttle mount that they developed for the Helix motor drive, and it'll work with really any Torqeedo remote throttle. So that's a nice install for that part of the system. What I'm working with Wilderness Systems right now is only the parts out of their rudder kit that you would need to steer a Torqeedo Ultralight 403. And that consists of the sliding foot braces, the line that goes through the tubes that they've already run through their boats, and a couple other small pieces like these quick connect clips to the steering triangle. Other manufacturers have their version of a rudder kit available, and that's a great way to steer your Torqeedo Ultralight 403. I'm going to take one last opportunity to really explain the importance of having the motor as far back as possible. It has to do with really feeding this prop down here clean water as far back as possible. I'm just finding and testing different boats with this motor. I'm always getting my best speeds with the motor jacked as far back as possible. Part of that starts with mounting this as far back as possible, whereas it may look like a more, a rugged and sturdy install to spread the distance between one contact point and the next. You're not going to get as good a speed. Learn to trust the design of these two pieces together and bring them close and get that motor as far back as possible. Now I've chosen a drill bit that's just a little bit smaller than the hardware given to install this. That way when I'm drilling in there, I really got to force it in and it's a nice tight fit. On top of that, once we're ready to put the hardware in, we're going to get a good coating of this in there just to make sure that everything there is watertight. If for whatever reason you've done the drilling and you think, uh-oh, I really didn't want it there, I wanted it here or here or here, again, this will save you. Go ahead and seal it up and put the drill, put the hole wherever it is you decide afterwards that you do like it. Just a real quick note, if you have a kayak that you don't have a way to access the inside of the hull for hardware on the inside, you have two options. One is to install a hatch, and there's a lot of circular hatches out there if you have real estate back here to install. I've done that many times in order to gain the access. The other option, and these are the anchors that come with the Torqeedo Ultralight 403 for your 4 bolts, and then the one for the cradle, and this special tool for putting them on. If you follow the directions with your Torqeedo Ultralight 403 on putting these in, these work great. It is a bit of a strain. You really do have to grease up you have to actually put some 3-in-1 oil in there so that these things, when they come in, when you're really using the tool, this compresses and it kind of stars out and it really becomes an anchor on the inside. It expands this way with these, these little ribs push out. So that's an option if you cannot access the inside, but if you can, obviously that's the better option. Before I add the silicone, I will just really let the teeth of these dig in a little bit. Not real far, just enough that it goes in easy once I get to putting the ball mount and the cradle in place. It's already kind of pre-threaded just from the teeth, just the first little bit. There's some other parts I failed to point out earlier. I do a lot of these installs, and I'm constantly moving motors from one boat to the other, and forget about these. This is the backing plate that'll go up inside there, because as the motor is under power, this is going to torque upward, and Certainly the washer on the inside with that nut is going to help, but this is going to provide a much stronger base for that. So line that up under there and get your hardware through. The other are these little cleats. Now I actually use different cleats than these, and actually a different mechanism for two things. One for lifting the motor up, and other for reversing or locking down the reverse mechanism. So let's go ahead and get some silicone on there. Make sure that seals up real good. I will also put a bead of this around the base just to make sure that no water's getting in there after the install. It's really a high position. It's a low likelihood that something's going to get in there. The biggest, I would say the biggest challenge is if you have a low spot and you have it mounted in that, if rain puddles in there. But again, that really should take care of it. We'll line this up on the holes, and that as a guide shows that I actually did a pretty good job. A lot of folks will want to measure it, and that's fine. I just eyeballed it. I think because I've done these so many times that, I don't know, I just kind of fly through it. Get the backing plate, washer and nut. And it is super nice having easy access to this. It's helpful to get all four in before you tighten any of them. By the way, Torqeedo, if you didn't know, is a German company. Everything here is metric. Maybe I should have mentioned that earlier. All right, we're down to a pretty critical part of this install, and that's deciding how many of these little stacked shims we're going to put in there. As you can see, as I'm setting them in there, it's either raising or slightly lowering, and I just put them all in there to kind of get an eyeball of where it's going to be. And really what you're looking at here is this motor pretty much straight up and down. I would say if it is, one thing you got to realize that the back of this boat is going to dig down a little bit once you're under power. So what you really want is for it to be certainly not tucked in like this, and maybe a little bit back like this. But if it's straight up and down, you know, that's a good starting point. And then you can add shims to raise it a little bit and get it to that point where when the back of it sits down, the goal is to have this prop pushing water straight back when you're under power. One thing I'll also tell you, you want to have this pipe as low down as you can. And let's see if we can move this. See the steering triangle? I got another quarter to 3/8 of an inch. I could probably take it to half an inch further down, and I may do that. I may actually need to do that in order to make sure that, you know, we're getting this blade in deep enough water, because the way that this particular boat is shaped, it's sort of sloping up, and it's a fairly high boat, so we want to get this this prop as deep as it can be to make sure that there's no cavitation going on right there. All right, now we'll go ahead and lock the whole system up onto our ball. Get the hardware here I'll be putting in. There is one side for the Allen and one side for the hex nut, and the hex nut should grab. They designed that part well. They designed a lot of this well. But the ball design, I mean, similar to the ram ball, is something that just allows you to, you know, put this motor in any number of different positions. Everything's on there, but it's a little bit loose, and I still have a little bit of play there. I'll finish tightening this, and then I'm gonna come back here and make sure that the position is exactly right. But you want to have these, you know, the gap between either side fairly equal, just to distribute the you know, the grasp evenly across the entire sphere in there. If you're pinching on one side and the other side's open, it's maybe not a good thing. So I went ahead and installed my steering lines, and those are connected through the boat up to the foot control steering. So my feet are gonna basically make this turn left to right. But one last adjustment here is all the way back here. I want to make sure that this is fairly level and centered, because if it kicks down this way, you know, you're not going to be pushing that water straight back, and I definitely want to be pushing that water straight back. All right, I'll go ahead and tighten that. Make sure you snug these down real tight, because if you don't and you gun it, the whole system might spin up like that. That's why I like these particular Allen keys, because they come in a set. It gives you this nice handle to really torque on good, and they slide in and out of there, and you get all your sets, all your sizes in one kit. Yeah, that's not going anywhere. All right, last thing to do, I've run my lines, and I have these nice little quick connects. They come right off. They're just like little carabiners. A lot of folks get the S-shaped ones that you can get at the hardware store, or even other little carabiners that you can kind of screw in. But that just makes it so it's a very quick disconnect. Probably the easiest way to disconnect the entire motor is with this bolt right here. Let's see if I can pull that down and show you. So you loosen that sucker and you pull the whole thing out this way, and then you just do the quick disconnect here with the steering triangle, and the only last quick disconnect you have is the lift line, which my lift line, again, another just little carabiner I hook up there. This goes towards the front of the boat, so that when I need to lift it up, say I'm coming shallow, I pull on this and the whole thing swings up out of the way. And we'll go ahead and go to the front, and I'll show you what that mechanism looks like up front. I have a sort of unique setup here. So you want to adjust your line such that if you're using a cleat, or in my case I'm using a ram ball, and it's just a little steel ring that fits on there, and that, if you look back, has brought the motor to the up position, safe from running shallow. The other line that you may want to run, and I'm not doing it with this particular one, but is right here, and you would run that forward and lock it down similarly, using maybe one of these cleats, and that would basically lock down your reverse. You can't have reverse in these, but I would say be careful with them, and just be cognizant as you're moving forward. You want to be able to pop it out of there quick if you do hit something moving forward. In fact, as soon as you are moving forward, you want it not locked down, because you can damage the system that way. When you're setting the length of your foot control cables, your rudder cables, if you will, it's important to first sit in the seat and figure out what's the appropriate length for your feet, because everyone has a different inseam or leg length, and you want to have the seat as far forward as possible to trim the boat so it's not riding like this, which isn't efficient. You want it to ride like this. So seat forward as much as you can stand it, and then find the right midpoint, because these are going to slide back and forth, inversely like this. So I've set them here. I've sat down in it and realized that, hey, this is the right length. I actually counted, back to, I think it was 10.5 of these little scalloped edge was the right one, right length for me. And then as you go back, I've already attached it here. I just drilled a hole through there and ran it through the lines there. And as we come back here, where this connects, this is a measurement that you got to get right. So I have those lines taut, and I'm going to go right to there. And the same thing on the other side. I got that line there, and I'm going to attach it to these little, I don't know what you call them, little quick release stainless steel clips. And I'll go ahead and put those on with these little crimps here. So once that's up, I'll show you how this foot control steering works. Okay, I've installed and got the correct length of stainless steel cable running from my foot pegs back to the motor. Let's go ahead and see how this thing steers back and forth. As I'm moving the foot pegs back and forth, I have pretty much a little bit of lift there, but pretty much in the water you're going to have 180 degrees range of steering. And what that's going to look like in the water is the boat just absolutely spinning in place. It'll have a very nice crisp rotation, and that's partially because the motor here is installed so far back on the boat. All right, I'm out here testing, and I put this in the water, and unfortunately this in this position it was a little bit too high. We had a little bit of cavitation of the top end of this the prop coming. Got my tools, and you know, you get this right the first time and then you're pretty much set. So I'm gonna take this off the cradle and take a couple shims out and see what that does for us. All right, I took one shim out, and I also remembered that I had a little bit more of that pipe to slide the steering triangle up. In this capacity, the steering triangle is setting the upper limit, and I got it all the way up. So, all right, no more cavitation. You can see back there, it's running deep enough to grab some good clean water, and I'm clipping along pretty quick. 5.2, 5.3. All right, my steering's working out pretty good. Nice and responsive with the motor all the way back like that. And it's clipping along pretty good here. No more cavitation.